Just hearing this news, your first reaction, certainly the disappointment that you feel to hear that this has happened again to Jon Jones.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Disappointment. This is the type of news that you hate to report. Jon Jones is the greatest talent I think this sport has ever seen, and we haven't really gotten to see a whole lot of him over the last few years. He was, he failed a drug test for cocaine, came back in 2015 and was stripped of his title after getting in that hit and run. Came back, was supposed to have his redemption story at UFC 200 last year against Daniel Cormier, was pulled from that fight because he tested positive for banned substances. And now here, this was his comeback story. This was Jon Jones returning to the sport, getting his life together. Everything was good. He still looked great against Daniel Cormier, still in the prime of his career. All systems go, and then we get this news that he has tested positive for a banned substance. TMZ reporting that it's an anabolic steroid. It might be a long, long time before we ever see Jon Jones fight again if these test results hold up.
And Dana White is denying that they're going to strip the title. That would seem like it's just a matter of time if it's as serious as it sounds. This was a great moment for him at UFC 214. It was great for UFC, which needs these front-facing stars to push forward. But if you look at, we know it's going to be disappointing for Jones, but what does this mean for UFC to have their number one guy on the pound-for-pound list potentially gone for a very long time, as you said?
There are not many blows that could be any bigger to the UFC as a brand and the organization as Jon Jones, failing another drug test and being out for multiple years. As I just mentioned, this guy is the greatest talent we've ever seen. And right now, Conor McGregor has surpassed him in terms of just fan interest, building fights. He is the superstar right now in the UFC. But Jon Jones, was right behind him, really. You have Ronda Rousey as well, but Rousey has been MIA since her loss to Amanda Nunes at the end of last year. It really was Jon Jones and Conor McGregor. Those are the two stars of the UFC, and now you're looking at, once again, missing out on Jon Jones.
All right, so you saw the news there. Jon Jones failed the UFC 214 drug test. I'm kind of shocked. This is ridiculous. I mean, this is really crazy. It's almost like unbelievable, to be honest, because, he did look so good. He did look so sharp. He did look so strong. But you factor in his age, at that age, you're at the age that Jon Jones is, you really, if you've been in shape and you've been working out, you've really reached the peak of your physical capacity at that particular point, and you're just trying to maintain it. So to me, it's crazy to me that this would happen again. And the reports that came out, TMZ, a lot of people made fun of TMZ for years, thinking that they're just kind of like a National Enquirer on TV or on the internet, but they come out with some information. I don't know who they're connected with, but they get everything breaking news, including sports. They get a lot of information sometimes about what's going on. And, of course, you heard a report that it potentially looks like it's steroids, which is insane. I could probably understand if it was drugs because, a lot of times when it comes to a recreational drug, a lot of people do battle with that. And that could be somewhat understandable if he was still having issues with recreational drug use, especially with, a guy that's, a millionaire. You're around certain people, and these people are doing drugs, and there's a temptation to do those drugs there that's always present. So that could be tough to, fight those type of urges, even if it's, leading up to a fight, for crying out loud. That could still happen. But when it comes to steroids use, that is something that is, you have to actually be down with that. And a lot of times it's driven by fear of losing, of fear of not winning. And, there was something that was very telling, and I'm going to read the article. There was something very telling in some of the interviews when you watch with Jon Jones. One of the things that he said is that his identity was very much tied to him having that UFC belt. And when I heard that, it made me think that either one, he was obsessed with getting that for his identity's sake, meaning that he was going to be willing to do whatever he could to be clean, to train as hard as he can so he could get that belt from Daniel Cormier. And now, to me, this vindicates Daniel Cormier again, because if it takes steroids for Jon Jones to actually feel like he can beat Daniel Cormier, I think that actually makes Daniel Cormier probably the most feared UFC fighter of all time. Because if the guy that is considered the pound for pound greatest talent in UFC history, which, you know, I would say is Jon Jones, if it means he has to use steroids in order to actually beat an older, almost 40-year-old Daniel Cormier, that means Daniel Cormier has to be the greatest of all time. Because he was actually feared so much that the supposed GOAT took steroids or a banned substance twice to have an edge over him. And that says something. Now I'm going to go ahead and read this. I don't even almost believe this, but when I saw the news earlier today, I was like, I saw a thread from another website, and I was like, nah, this can't be real. Maybe that's referring to the old story of him being banned last year and all that stuff. I didn't even pay attention to it. I just now went and actually read it and said, this is actually real. So here's the article. This is from Brett Okamoto from ESPN. He's an ESPN staff writer. It says, UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones failed a drug test ahead of his championship win over Daniel Cormier at UFC 214 last month in Anaheim, California. UFC President Dana White confirmed on ESPN on Tuesday. Now, I'm telling you, if you're Dana White, this is insane because that was a big-time fight. I think that it was a fight that everybody was looking forward to as far as this year with UFC. Even if you were a UFC casual, that was a fight you circled on your calendar that you wanted to watch. Now, if you're Dana White, I think at this point, I mean, I feel bad for, Daniel Cormier because he's not able to get a legit win or a legit matchup against Jon Jones. And I think at this point, it's like, I don't think it's even bittersweet. I think that it makes him probably feel good knowing that he didn't get beat by a guy that was playing fair. But I think at the same time, it's like, my goodness, can we just get a fair match? And it's just a very bad thing on that end. Now, I think what's going to happen with Daniel White and what he's going to do, I think that it's a minimum of 2 years suspension, possibly 3. 3 years suspension. I think it might be a 3-year because of multiple offense, because when you factor in the fact that, you have a guy like Daniel Cormier who's a consummate professional, a very clean guy who basically, according to our accounts, didn't cheat the game. And, you got other guys that are putting in so much work that are trying to honestly move up. And now you got a guy who already has immense physical talent from a talent standpoint. Then he's getting an extra edge with potential steroids, which is being reported. Again, it's not conclusive. I think hence the reason why in the next season it says, White denied that UFC has stripped Jones of the title, as TMZ reported. Now, I think the reason why is because when these results come out, you do have to go through multiple checks. You got to check it again and make sure that, you check multiple samples and make sure there's no crazy contamination going on. You just can't outright strip off of the first information. You got to really, truly figure out what was actually tested. Was there any funny business going on before you make an official strip? And on top of that, if he does strip him of the title, I believe that Dana White will do it publicly and announce it. I just think at this particular point, with the Conor McGregor fight coming up in the next coming days, and I just think that it's just not the time to address it. I think that if you're Dana White, you don't address that issue right now. You're focusing strictly on promoting Conor McGregor because Dana White is going to make some of that money off of that fight. Don't believe in any way, shape, or form that Conor McGregor seeing all $100 million or whatever he's getting from that fight. There's cuts to be made, and I think if you're Dana White, you're looking to make sure you get this cut of the money from helping promote this fight, from setting it up together. So you focus on that first, then maybe come Sunday, maybe you might address this issue. I think if anything, if Dana White does address this beforehand, the earliest he addresses it is tomorrow, and there is no reason to address it on Thursday or Friday or Saturday. So either he addresses it tomorrow, so that way he doesn't have to talk about it from Thursday and Friday and Saturday, and then he can address whatever else he needs to do moving forward from there. So we're going to read this next part. In a statement released Tuesday, UFC said John's failed test stems from an in-competition sample that was collected at his weigh-in on July 28th, the day before his fight against Cormier. So who knows? A lot of times what happens is they'll have a masking agent that will be used. A lot of times in these steroids, it's very complex because different steroids have different ways for it to be hidden. And a lot of times they know it's hidden if they use some other masking agent that they can find within the urine sample, which would also fall under the category as a banned substance, which would also be able to decode what it was because they would know what masking agents can be used to cover particular steroids. Okay, now going further on, it says here, according to TMZ, which was first to report news of the failed test, Jones tested positive for anabolic steroid turinabol. White did not comment on the banned substance for which Jones tested positive. Now, I'm going to look probably more information on this particular banned substance to see, maybe how they are masked. I'm pretty sure you could probably find something on YouTube and find out, information about how that works. Now, I'll say this. Some of these steroids, from what I've read, cause, premature balding. And some of them cause, hair to grow on the body, or could even mess with someone's even vocal cords as well, depending on if they're a man or a woman. Now, some of these are cycled. Some of these have long-term effects. There's different things that can happen. And usually the side effects with anabolic steroids would be known by someone that knows the person in terms of their behavior, especially, or their aggressiveness. They're overly aggressive, or they're overly agitated and irritated, kind of like a Incredible Hulk. So there's different things that they can go on with that. And, the immense amount of strength that it would take for a guy like Jones to overtake a world-class wrestler in Cormier, he would probably need that just to get away from the grappling ability of a guy like Daniel Cormier, who's extremely strong. So, the frame in which John Jones is built, he has a more of a lanky but strong frame. But you got the frame of a Daniel Cormier who's more, husky. There's a difference in how you would approach a guy, and in that means. So you would think that maybe that's what the advantage he was looking for, but it's just amazing to me that if anybody on his team would have been down with giving him any anabolic steroids, because he wouldn't have gotten that on his own. He would have to have gotten it through someone on his team or someone that he knows personally, and whoever that person was, or it probably went through different hands, because a lot of times when these guys get these steroids, they don't get it directly from the source. They get it through guys that are intermediaries that they would deal with on their team. And at some point, you would have to say to a guy, hey, bro, you have a potential to get your name back, to make millions of more dollars. I mean, John Jones had a freaking, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was a Nike deal, where he was the first, him and, of course, Anderson Silva were, Nike MMA athletes, and he lost that deal. So it's like, these are things that you can hope to try and gain and get your name back, and it's very difficult, and again, athletics is a very competitive thing, and it's things that like this that happens in sports that we really shouldn't be too shocked of overall. I think people are just more shocked because of the fact that he had to wait to come back, and he would think that he would do differently, but it's just a sad situation for the sport and for the situation right now. Now, this is another sentence we'll go into. It says, this is from Jones Camp. We are all at a complete loss for words right now, Jones Camp said in a prepared statement. John, his trainers, his nutritionists, and his entire camp have worked tirelessly and meticulously the past 12 months to avoid this exact situation. We are having these samples tested again to determine the validity or source of the contamination. And that's what shocks me, because I just don't believe that anybody on his team that will be making money by being a trainer for John Jones would allow him to go down that route, considering the financial ramifications it could mean for themselves as his trainers, nutritionists. in sparring partners, whatever it is, it's mind blowing to think that would be the case, because that's the last thing you'd want when you got a world champion fighter who's slated to make millions of dollars, who's still young, and who you could benefit from as well. Okay, so it says, John is crushed by this news, and we're doing whatever we can as a team to support him. This is the second failed drug test of Jones' tumultuous career. The UFC was forced to pull Jones from a scheduled headliner against Cormier just days before the UFC 200 in July 2016, after he tested positive for anti-estrogenic agents, which that's what I was talking about, because the estrogenic agents are used to mask steroid use. And that's the reason why he was caught the first time. So I don't know if the testing has gotten better, that they maybe been able to find out what it was, or if they know what masking agents are used for certain steroids, which is more than likely as well, to where they would have an idea, because these doping agencies, they have a lot of information and they know a lot about steroid use and how to mask it. And a lot of times these steroid people that are steroids dealers, they always try and find the loophole during these times of the testing periods that they could beat, that maybe the doping agency isn't on. And it's possible he might have been told that, hey, they got this masking agent, you won't get test positive for this particular substance if you cycle it this way and use it this way, and you take it do this before the fight, you'll be good to go, and they won't even know. So that's what they tell them, but again, they get caught at the end of the day. So I'm not going to read the whole thing. Again, this is crazy, and I think that a lot of people that are in MMA, I just think that this is a little bit of a low for MMA, considering that now you have McGregor, your top cash cows of right now, fighting $100 million fight on his side, and 300 potentially million for Floyd Mayweather. If he goes into this fight and he ends up getting destroyed, this is going to be a huge L for the week for UFC, a huge L. So we'll see what happens with this. At the end of the day, it's crazy, because there was reports that there was a super fight that they were looking to do between basically Miocic and Jones, and now that's not happening, and that could have been a big time fight, if that happened between those two fighters, and if they could have agreed to some kind of a weight that they wanted to do, or if basically Jones was going to move up, which I believe he has the frame. If you just look at his brothers, he could move up a little bit more in weight and maybe use his flexibility and his wrestling ability as well to basically compete in that super fight, which would have probably been a huge fight for UFC, and probably been, probably a $10 million purse on that one for either fighter. So, but at the end of the day, we're going to see what happens over the next coming days about this situation. Of course, Dana White has yet to really speak out on this. Again, it's just initial drug tests, and then also on top of that, Dana White has yet to strip John Jones of the title as well. So we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.